A big thank you to Faith Fuller in Atlanta, Georgia for sponsoring today's video. Which is your favorite part of the writing process?
I think when you get an idea that you know is going to do something, is going to be your life for the next 2 years, I think that's pretty great. I also love the last sentence in my book. There's never been one where I'm not absolutely verklempt, weeping, feeling spiritual, thankful to my mom, for her belief in my writing. That is like, it's not like giving birth, because what does a man know about that? But it's something, it's almost like holy, that last line, and I don't know, it's like, that's my purpose on this world. The first sentence of the book is pretty amazing too. And you have to really think about that. For my small town book, it probably took me 2 hours. How do I find that first line? Is that crazy? Because I have the word beast in my first line of my small town book. The beast you couldn't stab, fanned across the waking city. And I thought, God, does that sound corny? Would Raymond Chandler ever say that? You know what I mean? But I just had to get it right. That first line. Sometimes I think you could tell. You asked, how do you know somebody has that it quality? Sometimes I think you could know it from the first line of a book. Sometimes not, because people start off slowly or they have their own ways. So, that first line, that last line, and then the conception of the book. I actually think a book, writing a book is a little bit like being in a couple and you get pregnant, because that first night, it's joyous and there's intimacy and there might have been some minor amount of alcohol consumed. And then, once you really commit to it, there's morning sickness and, morning sickness and back pain and, going out and getting, pistachio ice cream at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's rough, and you have to be really committed, and you have to make preparations for it. And then, this glorious, jubilant moment of giving birth, right? And then what happens? Somebody takes your baby away, and they judge that baby. Because that's what happens when you write a story, a book. What came only from you, now other people are going to take it and condemn it and judge it. Maybe they'll say something nice, maybe they'll give you a starred review, but a lot of people will be looking for something to get pissed off about at you. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, you never argue with your critics. But man, especially in today's internet-driven book review world, and there's some things that aren't right. It's a little, it definitely some whiplash goes on. When you release your book to the world, I would not have it any other way. If I could do it again, I would have started writing novels when I was 25 years old, and they'd probably be horrific. But by the time I was 35, maybe I know what I was doing. So yeah, that's my only regret. My next life, I'm coming back. I'm getting into it right away.
Well, I get the sense that you can take the punches, at least externally, that you're not gonna go in the fetal position and for at least maybe not outwardly.
Yeah.
But I've heard of also authors having to reinvent themselves with an entirely different name because of critics. And just being tired of having to deal with it.
There's I think, you have to live, and it's the internet. I do think the internet and social media especially, social media lives on conflict. It also lives on creating false equivalencies and comparisons. And somebody said, comparison is the death of joy. And it is true. So, some of the people reviewing this book were so, because there's different companies that will review your book. They get a galley of a book and they review it. Some of these people had read 5 pages and said it's boring, or I did not finish after 5 pages, or they get such basic things wrong. You do wonder, who is this person? Have they taken an English class? So I can't get upset. I've had people give me great compliments, and I've been knocked before. I don't let it really bug me too much, to be honest with you. Yeah. Sometimes I will get a little bit defensive, and then I'll go back and think, you know what? I probably could have done that better. I was probably too glib there. I will tend to overwrite if I feel rushed or forced or trying to prove I can compete with that person, But when I relax and just let it naturally flow, that's when you get really good sentences. But I do try not to get too worked up about it because you know what, in the end, I think I've had a pretty magical career. As a journalist, things came so easily for me. But my life's arc was not supposed to always be easy. I did come from a family with resources, but I was supposed to struggle. I was supposed to fail and faceplant, you know what I mean? That's part of, what fun would it be if I just, you know what I mean? If I hit a home run or whatever and I came around, my jersey is clean, immaculate. I needed to get roughed up, and I have been roughed up. I have run into, I used to think writing was this virtuous, snow white profession in some ways, and then I found out, nope, there's just as many good and bad people proportionally in that industry as in politics. I've been screwed by agents. I've been defrauded by publishers. I've also been greatly benefited by amazing agents like the one I have now, or like the publisher I'm with. But you know what? I in a way, being a writer, we're all failing writers. We're all, in a way, because nobody's writing the perfect book. It is supposed to be almost more about you than it is for your audience. You're supposed to get roughed up and humbled because that's how you learn. Does anybody really want to read somebody who's 20 years old or 25 years old if they're writing a certain type of story, presenting themselves as 80? No, because life has not shaped them yet. So I think that's part of the reason, I'm doing this now. When I was 35 years old, 40, I wanted to find that corrupt politician and, you know what I mean, and get the New York Times interested in me. But things changed, and so, this story especially, I found out there are bad people in the world. The publisher, I can say now, the publisher I was with, who was based in New Jersey, this woman started negotiating the film rights behind my back. And when I caught wind of it, the journalist in me was irate. And then she realized she did not want to be working with somebody asking more questions than she could answer. So the whole thing blew up. It caused, damage to my career, questioning of my own self-confidence. But eventually I came out of it. I had people that believed in me and said, no, this is just part of everybody. We all have stories like that. That actually helped a lot. There's a lot of author, agent, horror stories in this town.
What happens on a day that you cannot write? Whether it's no ideas are coming, you're busy.
I never have those days. No. My problem is I get so focused, I will work myself into exhaustion. True story, when I finished one book, this is like maybe 10 years ago, my brain cache was at so low that we had like a celebratory dinner, and my wife and kids were like in the ice cream shop and they go, "Where's Dad?" And I was like wandering around the parking lot, just perfectly happy with my ice cream cone. I didn't even know where I was. My brain, I don't think, could even, realize you should be staying with them. I was so wiped out and exhausted. It's a very draining thing to write a book. I'll say the more depressing the book, the more I need to go to my guitar. As soon as that book is done, I've submitted to my publisher and make a song up. I wrote the best song of my life after I wrote the most depressing book of my life about China's environmental catastrophe. So it's a weird thing when you finish a book because you still have leftover creative energy. For me, I do. So actually what I'm doing with my next novel, there's an imaginary band in the book. It's called Radius Thaddeus. And we're going to record songs, and release them on YouTube. Like you're seeing the 18-year-olds, in a band playing the typical kind of, late 70s rock, And so I want to try to I always want to do things differently in the next book. In Arroyo, I made up a New York Times story. I made up a letter. In current book, I have an essay about Frank Flint, the founder of Flint Ridge. I have emails. I was thinking of a screenplay passage, but that's one of the fun things is to try to always be creative. Where can it go? Maybe more people will watch that video of me playing guitar than will read my book. But that's what I like is and especially if you have a cool publisher for stuff like this, and I do. Rare Bird Books, they're a very musically oriented place, and so they don't say no. They say, well, how can we make it work in support of each other? So yeah, that's one of the things I'm giving myself as a treat. Once you're done with that book, you get to go write your song.
Well, they have vinyl as well
Absolutely.
in their library. Okay.
Oh yeah, they do great vinyl work. Yeah. So I don't have a day when I can't write. I don't have a day. Sometimes I'm thinking, when you write your book, it's like you write some. I don't want to give it away, but a man goes insane in my book, and I'm thinking, is anybody going to buy this? It's so crazy, and will they lean into it? But they will, if you're convincing and it makes sense. I just did an event at the Linda Vista Library. I'm coming from the world of journalism, nonfiction. Fiction is so competitive. There's people that have been doing this since they were 10 years old. Brilliant, brilliant people. And, sometimes you just think, we think a lot of us, I have the imposter syndrome. I just fooled them once, but when I had this book event, there was a room full of people that wanted to, were interested. So that kind of like is a little bit of affirmation, to keep going. But I never have a day when I can't write. There are days when I can't write well, but I don't have a day where I'm going, I can't do it. I'm going to go to Magic Mountain or something like that. That never happens. Part of it was I was a journalist. If you told your editor, I don't feel like writing today, they were going to be, oh, well, then I need your parking pass, and bye.